Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Heritage and Cultural Society of Africa Foundation, also known as HACSA, 2021 live webinar series under the theme Bridging the Gap. Thank you for joining us. My name is Yvonne Bochwe, and I'm the representative for the Ghana branch of the HACSA Foundation. We chose the theme of Bridging the Gap so that we could explore, discuss, and highlight the various ways in which we are eliminating the linguistic, cultural, social, geographic, or trade-related barriers that keep the African diaspora apart. For our fifth webinar for 2021, we are honored to speak with an icon treasured in both Africa and the Caribbean, Mr. Lebrecht Hesse. A formidable lawyer and public servant, Mr. Hesse's impact transcends continental boundaries, and he is the living embodiment of what it means to bridge the gap between cultures. Our conversation with Mr. Hesse will touch upon his work on the African continent and conclude with his work in the Caribbean. Welcome, welcome, Mr. Hesse, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you. I hope our interview today will inspire the youth of your club or society to help them to assist in helping the African continent to become one again and to be a formidable force in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse. I think that's definitely a challenge that we should all rise to, working together to make sure that the African continent can become one again. Thank you. What a great way to sort of set the stage. So let's begin with our first question. As a living legend, over the course of your 87 years, you have been involved in or bore witness to key socio-political movements. Now, 2020 and 2021 have been a tumultuous time, not just due to COVID-19, but also due to widespread social political movements that have demanded justice and equality for Black people across the globe. During your time at University of Ghana, you described yourself as a student activist, and you even introduced Malcolm X when he visited your campus. Now, I'm sure everyone in the audience would like to hear more about that experience. So if you could, kindly share with us why you were selected to introduce Malcolm X. And then as a follow-up, we would like to know, how would you compare the social injustice issues that you were fighting for during your university days with the racial injustice reckoning that is occurring now?
Yes, I was a student activist when I was in university. I started by writing in the student newspapers across the various halls, ended up by being an editor of one of them, the Siren of Mensa Saba Hall. And I rose to become also the president of Mensa Saba Hall. In fact, I was the second president of the hall when it started. I also became, in my last year, the editor of the Legonite, where I wrote articles, both the editorial and a column, to help to assist people to understand the issues of the day. I remember during those tumultuous times, there were people had misgivings of our self-government because it is believed that the government at the time was very authoritative and dictatorial. We were subjected to all sorts of political maneuvers. People were afraid to talk. They do not want to share their views openly. We decided, some of us decided, to form a forum, a group, which will not be considered as hostile to the government of the day. So we formed a group called the Marxist Study Forum. And the forum became the focal point for all sorts of people to come and share their views. Views from lecturers, from professors, from prominent members of the society came to give talks. And that was how we tried to eliminate that sort of fear that if you speak your views, you will be arrested or you will be shut up. At a certain point of time, Malcolm X was also engaged in activities in the United States. In our group, that is the Marxist Study Forum, we have students from the West Indies, and we have students from the United States of America, that is African American students. We decided to invite Malcolm X to come to the college or the University of Ghana, and he agreed to talk to the students. I was asked to introduce Malcolm X because I happened to be the president of the Marxist Study Forum. And that was how I came to introduce Malcolm X to the audience at the Great Hall of the University of Ghana.
Wonderful. Can we hear a little bit more about what that experience was, him addressing the student body at that time?
Malcolm X, when he came to Ghana, he was an angry person. And when he saw how the Ghanaian students mixed with the white students, he expressed his anger at that to the extent that he pointed out that, look, you see them laughing at you. When you get to the United States of America, they would not be laughing at you. He told them to their face. And after a time, we realized that when Malcolm X returned to the United States, he changed his views about the relationship between black people and white people. He realized that in Ghana, our experience with white people probably are not the same as their experience in the United States. So he became sober in his views in relation to racial discrimination.
Wonderful. It's great to see that even with, great leaders, they're able to recognize that they can pivot and shift in terms of their perspective and views based on learning and continue to learn and grow. So that's really good to hear. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your comparison in terms of those social justice issues that were occurring during your university days, and how you would compare that with what is happening now, particularly with the Black Lives Matter movement and other related movements that are demanding for equality and justice for people of color across the globe.
The problems we had in Ghana during those years when I was in university was different from the racial discrimination which is happening all over the world now. White against blacks, white against brown people, and things like that. Our fight at the time was against corruption of politicians in government and public officials. Mm-hmm. And later on, there was also military regimes, which we didn't like, and we fought against those regimes. And the question of racial discrimination is something which is global, and it is because the races were separated naturally. I believe when the earth was created, or when God created the earth, he put black people at a certain place, and he put white people at a certain place, and brown people also at certain places. So the difference, we do not know each other well. So when time came and black people began to move into areas of the world, they were looked upon as less human beings, less of a human being, and they were discriminated against. And therefore, now that we are trying to live together as one people, and especially the United States, which have taken the forefront to have most of the races living in that continent, have an obligation to see to it that the experiment which they claimed that they are making to make the world a better place for all becomes a reality.
Yes, exactly. Let's pivot a little bit, but it's actually following in line with, Black people moving into different areas of the world. You yourself experienced that personally. You began your legal education at University of Ghana, and then you continued your education in Canada at the University of Ottawa. In moving from Ghana to Canada, did you encounter any racism while you were studying and working in Canada?
In my class in the University of Ottawa, I happened to be the only black student. I have a way of dealing with discrimination and racism. I ignore people. So I did not even recognize that I was being discriminated against. It happened that this continued for some time, and I find that people in the class started gravitating towards me and asking me questions because they found that sometimes I had better marks than they do. And they want to find out why and how. But on the whole, I did not experience any racial discrimination in Canada. In fact, I was assigned to work at the Parliamentary Council in Canada. And I worked with him for about 9 months. And then when I was about to leave, he tried to convince me to stay. And I told him that I was brought there by my government and I have an obligation to go, so I have to go. I did not find any racial discrimination. I didn't experience any racial discrimination in Canada, to be honest with you. I don't know about the experience of others, but me particularly did not experience any discrimination.
That is wonderful to hear. We don't always get that sort of positive experience when people are moving from one culture that might be predominantly people of color to another, that's another, racial demographic. Now, let's move a little bit more into sort of the influences for your career. Now, as you look over your career, the ideals of justice and democracy are common themes. Perhaps they are rooted in the fact that you came of age, roughly, during Ghana's successful independence movement. Please describe how it felt to be alive when Ghana became independent.
Oh, it was a very thrilling experience. We have never had that before. Those of us who were alive when independence was declared were so happy. We were so happy, and we look forward to changing situations in our country at that time. I remember on the eve of independence, 6th of March 1957, we all three went to the polo ground. It was then called Polo Ground, in front of the old Parliament House. People from all over the country traveled to come to Accra to share, to welcome the new era of independence. And you can find the jubilation everywhere in the country, and particularly in Accra. People were happy, they were enjoying themselves. But of course, to be honest, not all people were happy. Those who were against Kwame Nkrumah were not happy. And they expressed it. I remember in Parliament at that day, the group that disagreed with him rhetorically told the British government in their speech that why were they trying to leave us so soon, and that we still need them. And this became also another controversial matter in the country. Then we have achieved our independence. Having achieved independence, it was not all a smooth sailing. Things were not as we expected things to be. There were corruption in government, there was nepotism, people doing what they like, and then finally there was a military coup that took over. And then after some time, people were also dissatisfied with the military, and they started agitating against them to leave power and leave the people to govern themselves. I remember that during those times, some people say, oh, we were not ready to be independent. And I remember Nkrumah telling them that when it comes to something that you have as of right, you were born with, that is your right. There is the question of readiness does not come into the question. There is no question of readiness. The person, the predator who has taken your power need not tell you or give you the time. He should release it to you. You take it. And then he said that, okay, we're not ready to govern ourselves. And I remember Nkrumah putting in his newspaper, Accra Evening News, that we prefer self-government in danger to slavery in tranquility. And that self-government is a thing which we have to take, either to govern or to govern ourselves or to misgovern ourselves. So we went on and on and on until when the military took over and people became dissatisfied again, we had to struggle to get rid of them. We managed to get rid of them. There was another military over when there was a civilian rule. And then there was another military takeover. It was becoming common. But we think there should be a stop to it. But one thing which I learned is that our politicians and our people, we are not honest to ourselves. When your leader or the party you belong to, the persons in authority are doing something which is wrong, because they belong to your party, you keep quiet. You know it is wrong or it was wrong, and you never said anything. But when the other party, the officers and who run the other party do something wrong, we all condemn. We come forward to condemn. Even those who can condemn in authority, like our chiefs, like our ministers of religion, they say, oh, I am not in politics. But to me, this is not a question of being in politics. What is wrong is wrong. When your brother is doing something which is wrong, you tell your brother he is wrong. If you cannot tell your brother that he is wrong in what he was doing, then you don't want to help your brother. And that is what have gone on and have colored and destroyed the Ghanaian population to the extent that we now ignore the truth and hold on to party affiliations. And until we change that, we're not going to be successful as a country.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse. I think that is, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And I do appreciate your comment that with respect to your view on independence and those who were detractors, that it is indeed true. If you have it as a right, it's not a question of being ready for it. You have to just take it. You just have to, yes, exactly. Exactly. So for those of you that are just joining us, we are fortunate and so very privileged to be speaking with Mr. Lebrecht Hesse, the former Solicitor General of Antigua and Barbuda. Mr. Hesse, I know we've been speaking about, and we just recently have finished our discussion on your experience living through Ghana's independence movement, but let's talk about your move from Africa to the Caribbean. So in making your move from Africa to the Caribbean, did you experience any culture shock in the transition, or was it a smooth adjustment? I have a few other related questions, but let's take it one at a time. So let's discuss if you experienced any culture shock in the transition, or was it a smooth adjustment?
When I first went to the Gambia, let's start from the Gambia.
Okay.
When I went to the Gambia, I have to leave the Attorney General's office in Ghana in circumstances not of my own choosing, because I was threatened with dismissal. And fortunately, I had this opportunity from the Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation. And I decided, well, look here, look at yourself. You've just married. So I decided that it is better I leave to go to the Gambia rather than to stay and be dismissed from the service. So I went to the Gambia. Before leaving to the Gambia, I had an impression, about a certain group of people. I think they are bad people. I don't think, to be precise, at that time we have very low thinking or experience with Muslims. So when I went to the Gambia, which is mostly Muslim country, 90% Muslim, I found to my surprise, there are Muslims who are better than Christians in the way they do things, the way they conduct themselves with you, the way they relate to you. And that made me change my mind completely about our concept of Christianity. Then, after my experience from the Gambia, they assigned me to Antigua and Barbuda. When I came to Antigua and Barbuda, I saw.
Hello, Mr. Hesse.
Wasn't really any, what I would term, something which was a shocker. But there were differences. I found familiar faces on the streets of Antigua, Market Street, for instance. When I was walking one day, I saw faces I thought they were faces, people I knew from Ghana. And I kept asking, when did this man came to Antigua? And I didn't know. When did this lady came to Antigua? And I didn't know. They were faces of people who we were, the impression I had then was that we were the same people. The faces are not different. Then what I will tell the shocker is their carnival. I have never seen in my life people in carnival costumes. People I describe as they dress half naked, dancing in the streets of market streets during carnival, which I think is a wonderful to behold. I look at it and I said, wow, do people do things like that here? Yeah, right, this is our culture, they told me. And I said, oh, back home, you will never see people like this in their costumes, which exposes their body parts and dancing. That was the thing. But then there are similarities. The food they eat, they have dukuna, which we call dokunu. They have fungi, which the Ghana people call banku. And the way they prepare it appear to be the same. So though they have had ingredients which were native to the Antiguan soil, which is different from the ingredients we use in Ghana. Then also, I noticed that they drink rum instead of akpeteshi, which we drink in Ghana, and people seem to enjoy it. As people in Ghana, those who drink akpeteshi enjoyed the drinking of akpeteshi. Then also, when it comes to way of doing religion, certain things, I realized that they also have the religion they received from the Western world. That is, if you are British, you have Anglican Church, you have Methodist Church, you have Moravian, you have Catholic. In Ghana, we have all those churches, probably except the Moravian, which is the same as, almost the same as the Presbyterian Church. Then the way that people relate to religion, you find that it's almost the same as we do in Ghana. There are people who are very regular in attending church. The way they dress to church is almost the same we dress to church. In what the Sunday dress, you will call it. Mm-hmm. And the way the pastor speaks, and then the way the pastor is preaching and the singing are almost the same. And then when it comes to cultural activities like drumming and things like that, they like loud music. And we also love loud music in Ghana. So these are some of the similarities and some of the differences in our cultures. It is not difficult to bring these together. We would have no difficulty in trying to bring Ghanaians and Antiguans together because the differences are not great. It is breachable.
Wonderful. So there's definitely a lot of commonalities between, all groups within the African diaspora. And truthfully, that is what HACSA is here to do, to really bridge the gap, to show us that there's far more that unites us than divides us. Let's talk a little bit about your actual lawmaking work in Ghana, Antigua, and Barbuda. So you have been responsible for groundbreaking legislation in Ghana, Antigua, and Barbuda. How do you think legislation can assist in bridging the cultural gap? if any, or we can discuss that as well, between Africa and the Caribbean?
The only way I see bridging the gap by way of legislation is we must first try and strengthen the regional unions and the African Union. Once we have been able to strengthen and bring all African countries into these unions, and then we can have agreements, and agreements which all states that belong will be obliged to implement by law. If it is on our dealings with commerce, we have we may have the same commercial agreements. There may be few changes. There may be few changes which are germane to particular island, but then the thing will be the same. But that one country should have its own legislation and ask another country to copy that legislation will not work. It's only when we have this united front, and the front has decided that this is what we want to do. You are sovereign states, so you go back to your various countries and implement the decisions of the group into law. By that, we can bridge the peoples of the Caribbean and peoples in the diaspora and Africa together.
So following along that theme, I guess, would you consider yourself then a Pan-Africanist?
Insofar as I believe in a united Africa, I would call myself a Pan-Africanist. Why shouldn't we have, for instance, people from one African country going to another African country, or the Caribbeans? Why should they need a visa before they travel to these countries? We are one people. Once you have your passport, you should be able to be admitted, unless you are a wanted person or you have, for some reason, been a prohibited immigrant in one particular country. But then we should be able to move freely without a visa to the various African countries.
Thank you. So I think then, as a follow-up, your thoughts on, I guess, the development that we're taking, or the movement we're taking in terms of opening up the routes of trade to the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement would be in line with your definition of a united Africa?
Oh yeah, it's part of it. It's all part of it. There are several other things, not only trade relations, cultural relations as well as exchange of people. Say, for instance, doctors from one country coming to another country to work for some time and leave and go back. Mm-hmm. Doctors, lawyers will come to the West Indies to work in their offices. Their lawyers will also go to Africa and work with their offices and try to exchange ideas. That is the only way we can go and bring our people together. And then students and visiting professors. This is something which, when I was in university, was going on. That it went on. We have professors from other universities coming, and students from the West Indies, students from United States of America coming to the Ghana universities and then going back. But all of a sudden, it appeared to me that this thing ceased to operate. When I came to the Antigua and Barbuda, I met in the other regions some of the students which I met at the University of Ghana when I was there. And it helped. It helped to bridge the gap between our two countries. So I think we should, if we are not doing it now, we should resuscitate it and then try and do it and exchange students, exchange lecturers, exchange professors, and people from other areas of endeavor. That's the only way we can bring the two groups together, because we are the same people. People in the West Indies come from, the black people from the West Indies are from Africa. They see us as brothers, and we see them as brothers, even though 400 years of slavery has separated us.
It's very true. That connection is still very, very strong. We are now nearing on. I have just one more question in terms of our formal interview before we segue into the Q&A. So I do hope that our viewers have your questions ready. We just have one more question that I will formally ask before we open it up to Q&A from the audience. So I'm sure that you have so many questions you'd like to ask Mr. Hesse. So for my final question, Mr. Hesse, using your illustrious career as a guide, what advice can you give our audience?
That's a good question. What advice? First and foremost, as Africans, we are one people. Colonialism divided us and ruled us and exploited us. Our objective is to unite to get rid of them. So we have one common enemy: to get the predator away from our shores. That should be something which should unite us to come together, so that if a decision is taken that this is what the African continent have decided, it should be implemented in all the other African countries and the Caribbean countries that we have united with. If we do not do that, it will be difficult for us to come together. And then also, you will find that you also will refer to common themes. Most of us have the same common things: religion, commerce, the way we do things. We should be able to have these serious exchanges of people, invite one another to come to your country, to come and share your experience. And you also go to their country and then share their experience. And then there are things we can learn from our friends and brothers and sisters in the West Indies, because of their 400 years of slavery. And there are also things they can learn from us, things they want to learn, things they think they missed after 400 years, and things we also think they have acquired as in association with their colonial and slave masters, which can be used by people in Africa to deal with the outside world.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse. I think you've given us so much to stew on, and particularly at the beginning of our discussion, you gave us the challenge of assisting in helping Africa to become one again. And really, I think when you meant Africa, you really were including the full African diaspora. And I think your recommendation that we engage on these culture exchanges, exchanges of information, history, and experience will truly help us as we move along to really being able to live up to your challenge. I'm now going to open it up to our audience. So hopefully you do have some questions. If you do have a question, please use the raise hand icon to indicate that you have a question. Alternatively, you may type your question in the question section and I'll read it aloud. I do see that we have some questions in the question box. Our first question from Victor. Victor has asked, what country or countries do you currently have citizenship in?
I have citizenship in Ghana, and I have citizenship in Antigua and Barbuda.
Wonderful.
Because these two countries are permit or allowed citizenship.
Great. Do we have, I think, I'm not seeing any raised hands. Hopefully everyone is really thinking through their questions. I know through this discussion, I have learned so much, and I've really been truly inspired as to what I can do, not only for, my immediate people, but really for the continent at large, and how I can be in my own space an agent to be able to bridge the gap between my brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, in the US, in Canada. There's a lot of work that we need to do. Oh,
yes,
great. Another question?
People should remember, especially the business community in these countries, that in Antigua and Barbuda, you can have citizenship not by the number of years you stay in the country, but what you are bringing to the country that will benefit the country by way of commerce, investment, by way of investment in the country, doing some developments. If you aspire to these things and you have an ambition to bring these things into Antigua and Barbuda, we can give you citizenship.
Great. So we have a few more questions coming into the question box. We have one question from Pocho Nikoi. In your experience, in a continent as religiously diverse as Africa, how have religious rights and religious law been at odds with lawmaking and the protection of human rights?
Religious rights, how do they impact on the law? My experience from Ghana and the West Indies, that is Antigua and Barbuda in particular, because our religion is derived from the Christian religion, the moral convictions which our religion have taught us are indirectly factored into our legislation. It is not something I will say is deliberate. Because you are a Christian, for instance, when you are preparing a legislation, your idea of fairness, your idea of justice is universal, I believe, but there are certain areas which, because of your religion, you try not to go against the principles of that religion. It may not be deliberate, but it is already ingrained in you. So you put it in the legislation, not deliberately. It is part and parcel of you. That's the way you think. And you want to share it with others before it goes to Parliament to be passed. If somebody raises an objection, You have to listen to that person, and then you have to discuss it with him. And if it needs changes, amendments, you can do those amendments before you present it to the public, because we are a society that also believe in freedom of religion. And we do not want to do anything which will impact adversely on somebody's religion, provided it is not offensive to our own religion.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse. We'll now we have a follow-up question from Victor. What is the relationship between Antigua and Ghana now?
Well, I know there are some Antiguans who visit Africa, and some particularly in Ghana occasionally. It is not yet something which one will say is frequent, but I believe the call of the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, in opening the year of return, people are asking, how do you get to Africa? We do not have a direct airline that goes from Antigua or any other West Indian island that go to Ghana, or from Ghana or anywhere in West Africa to the West Indies. It is time we start cultivating and building an air travel from Africa to the West Indies.
Yes, agreed. We have our next question from Shreyas. Shreyas is asking, Mr. Hesse, I am an Indian citizen, and I've read a little bit about how the work of the Indian freedom fighters inspired some of the countries in Africa to fight for their own independence. Did you notice that with Ghana's independence?
Of course. Mahatma Gandhi was one of the leaders whom Ghana looked up to when during the independence struggle. And you will remember, or you were not born then, I believe, I recall that Nkrumah visited India. Well, he was a friend of Nehru. Nkrumah visited India after we have attained independence. So the relationship between India and Ghana started long ago. The struggles of India, led by Mahatma Gandhi, inspired some of our leaders to follow his suit and do the same. And people of African descent, also those who have read about Mahatma Gandhi, are inspired by his qualities of humility and selflessness in the fight against his colonial oppressors at the time. So Ghana took a lot from the experience of Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru.
Great. Our next question is from Harold. Harold is asking, what would you perceive as hurdles to be overcome to foster closer ties between Africa and the Caribbean?
Suspicion. I believe we are suspicious of each other because we have not opened ourselves up to one another. Once we open ourselves, the suspicion will disappear.
Yes. Our next question, we have a follow-up from Victor. Over your many years living in Ghana, Gambia, Antigua, and Barbuda, what events have given you the most hope for better race relations between Caucasians and non-Caucasians?
Caucasians and non-Caucasians. My experience is that you do not mix with them or go to them with the idea that you are inferior. You go to them on equal terms. And if they don't accept you, you don't also accept them. You don't care. You don't try to push yourself to them. You want to do what they do. If you, and if they discriminate against you, you can't complain. If they don't want you in their group, you form your own group and compete with them. That is how they will recognize you and then look at you as their equals. But some of us Black people always want to do what the white people are doing. We do not want to do our own. We want to go to their schools. We don't want to establish our own schools. And if we establish our own schools, we think our schools are inferior. So we are all aspiring to go to their schools. And if they discriminate against us, we complain. We have to stop these things and appreciate what we have. I remember reading Lord Lugard says that the way we can rule these people is to make them believe that ours, what we have or what we're doing was better than theirs. And once we are able to achieve that, we will conquer their minds and rule them. So what we have to do is to let them know that we have certain things in our culture which we also believe is better than theirs. We do not have to accept whatever they ask us to accept. We do not have to follow whatever they follow. They have their own principles and we have our own principles. We will keep to ours and do not believe that what you have is inferior to what they have. This is the advice I can give to my fellow Africans and Black people all over the world.
Thank you.
Let us do and appreciate what we are doing. It may not be equal to what others are doing, but we are starting and we have to love ourselves, appreciate what we have been able to do, rather than try to compare it with people we call living in advanced countries.
Thank you for that, Mr. Hesse. Our next question is from Nikki. Nikki is asking, Mr. Hesse, was the Evening Post owned by Kwame Nkrumah?
Was the what?
The Evening Post.
Evening Post. I do not know of the Evening Post. But I know Kwame Nkrumah established the Evening News, Accra Evening News. It's called the Evening News.
So it's likely that was the distinction. Nikki, you can also provide further follow-up clarification.
Right. It's the Evening News, not the Evening Post.
Okay. We'll now go on to our next question from Akuya. Akuya is asking, what, in your opinion, will it take for Ghana to be free of foreign aid?
To be free of foreign aid. To be free of foreign aid, we have to do a lot. We have to look at the way our economy runs. We are supposed to be, most of the African countries and people in the West Indies, we are primary producers of raw materials. We produce cocoa, we produce coffee, we have diamonds, mine diamonds, gold, and other minerals. Unfortunately, we sit down, we do not determine the price of these things. we allow the purchasers or the customers, our customers, to determine how much they will give us. I am told, for instance, that cocoa fetches the cocoa farmers or the cocoa growing areas about 5 billion a year. When we send the cocoa beans to Europe, they process it into cocoa powder, chocolate, butter, milk, and things like that. The products from cocoa fetches them about 140 billion. We do not share part of these things. Is it not time for us to start making chocolates? I know we have started this in Ghana. We have to process the things ourselves. Every year, they send people from Europe to go into the farms. And after they have surveyed the yield, the prospective yield, they go there and determine the price of cocoa. We don't determine. When they mine the cocoa dust, the diamonds or the gold, we do not refine them. I don't know whether they have revived the refinery in Ghana, but Nkrumah created a gold refinery. The cocoa ingots are taken to wherever, Switzerland, Britain, or wherever, and turned into gold. And when they tell us it is 20,000 pounds, we do not have any means of saying, no, it is not. We accept. Unless we come together and decide that, look, we are going to do these things ourselves. We are not going to sit down and allow foreign countries or foreign commercial manufacturers to determine our prices. We will be determining our prices, not them.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hesse. Thank you. Our final question, before we conclude our Q&A, is from Mary. Mary is asking, Mr. Hesse, please, what do you think is the cause of most Africans in the diaspora after they complete their studies? Why do they stay back and not return home to build the continent? What can be done to motivate them to come back home to the continent?
Most of the African students being sent to Europe to study were sent mostly, or their tuitions and living standards were paid by governments. Few were paid by their parents. And when they see the life in these European countries, they fail to think. They think it is better for them to live in those countries than to come to their country and help. Some find that the situation in their countries so abysmal that they do not want to return. They want to stay outside and make money, and fail to recognize that they were sent there to educate themselves to come and help their people. By not coming home in the first place, it is wrong. It is wrong. Your people have sacrificed and sent you there. You have to return and work. After you have worked for some time, you have an agreement. Mostly they have an agreement. If the agreement expires, you have worked for 5 years. You have finished your term of the contract. Then you can leave and go and live anywhere you want to in the world. the way it says, why should intelligent people who call themselves educated and being intelligent, why should they take the people's money to educate themselves? And then the government who send them there will have to do something to attract them to come back. I don't understand. I believe that either, except we have, say, for instance, an arrangement with the country where you are going to study. After you have finished your studies, they should see to it that you return to the country that sent you, unless you were educated by your parents or your own people. But if it's a government-sponsored a government-sponsored scholarship that sent you to that outside country, it should be a contract between yourself, the government who sent you, and the government of the country you are going to study, to see to it that you return to your country. It is an obligation, a moral obligation, which we all have, and which...
Thank you. Sorry, please, Mr. Hesse.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I do have a follow-up question in terms of education, and this comes from Lady Gifty. We are near just the end of our Q&A, so we'll take the question from Lady Gifty, then we have another question from Martha, and then we will conclude with a question from Mr. Manu. So we will begin with Lady Gifty's question. Until fairly recently, Ghana allowed non-Ghanaians to attend our law schools. Do the Antigua law schools allow non-nationals to attend? And when they complete their studies, are they allowed to practice in that jurisdiction? Are they allowed to practice in Antigua?
Antigua belongs to the CARICOM Union. We have the University of West Indies, where you go, as if you want to study law, you must first go there to study law. They allow people from every place to come. They allow Africans to come. In fact, one of our professors, distinguished professors from Ghana, Dr. Albert Fiajo, taught at the University of West Indies, the Faculty of Law, for a long time before he returned to Ghana. So you are allowed, but before you practice as a lawyer, you have to attend the law school, you see, and call to the bar in either one of the islands where they have the law schools, like Trinidad, like Jamaica, and then the Bahamas. I believe you have to go, you pass the law, and then you can practice in whatever island you want to stay, if you have a visa to stay in that country.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse. Our next question, if you could, please tell us about the origins of the Hesse family, the Hesse name and the Hesse family in Ghana.
Say it again, please.
If you could please tell us about the origins of the Hesse name and the Hesse family in Ghana.
The Hesse family, the Hesses originally come from Germany, from land Hesse. They came with the Danish colonizers. They were commercial people, and they settled at Osu. They purchased the castle, the Osu Castle, which used to be called Christiansborg Castle, named after the Christiansborg in Denmark, which they bought from the Swedish. And they have children with Ghanaians, and that's how the Ghanaian essays originate. And they came to Ghana in the year, I've forgotten, in the 17th century.
So our next, we have a comment from Martha. This is a follow-up to your response with respect to the natural resources that we have and the lack of refinement at our level, and really not reaping the economic benefits of multiple stages of production and process in country, and really being and unfortunately exporting that outside. But Martha has just asked and made a comment that, sir, haven't our leaders sold off all our natural resources as far as gold and cocoa is concerned?
Can you repeat that again, please?
So Martha is asking also / making a comment that haven't our leaders sold off all our natural resources as far as gold and cocoa is concerned?
They have sold our resources.
Yes, I think it's /statement /comment, but essentially that haven't our leaders sold our resources as far as gold and cocoa? Do you find this to be true, or do you disagree with her statement?
I do not have the evidence that they have sold. How did they sell it? You mean for one particular season, or for all seasons? It's already sold before it is harvested. Is that what he meant?
So we can, following this discussion, yes, she's saying yes.
I do not have the evidence that our government have sold our cocoa and our gold. I know that the gold, the certain places have been leased, and the cocoa miners from abroad mine the gold from the land that has been leased for them. If we do not want that arrangement, it has been a commercial arrangement for a long time. There's nothing we can do about it now, except the only way we can go about it is to take it away from them by compulsory acquisition of the mines. Then we have to pay them compensation for compulsory acquisition. Or we forget about those mines, and we change the way we team up, we ask them to do the mining. Either if we do not have the means, if you want to have a mine in Ghana or a cocoa farm in Ghana, you must team up with a Ghanaian before you give him the license to operate. If you don't want that, we don't lease the land to you. This is what we should do. Either if Ghanaians are not ready to do it, or they do not have the money, I believe investors who are coming must be required to team up with another Ghanaian before they do their business in Ghana.
Agreed. And now we have our final question from Mr. Manu. Mr. Manu is asking, would you say that the African's contentment with his current situation and the lack of drive to improve his situation is the reason why poverty and lack continue to dominate us?
Yes and no. But mostly I think it's because we do not have a plan. Our political system is not working to our advantage. Even the so-called Western democracy, the Westerners are not satisfied. It is not working for them. You look at ourselves in our custom and cultural management of things. Land is not sold. The idea is that land belongs to the people who are dead, those who are living, and those who are about to be born. So you don't sell your land. Now we are selling, giving it to them to the extent that in certain areas, they have sold all their lands, they have nothing. What we should do is that you can lease the land to a person for as long as you want, provided it is not sold freehold to him. If you look at the investment, and then you decide that, look, I will give it to you for 10 years or for 20 years or for 50 years. But you don't sell the land to them. And that is what we have been doing. So we have to sit down. And then we have a system of government which do not permit us to sit down together. We are divided. Democracy has divided us. We have become enemies to one another. We don't listen because I belong to this party and you belong to this party. And even if you hear then politicians saying, when the president wins the election, I'm president for all the people. If you are president for all the people, why do you not appoint some of the people from the other side into your government? Why do we not have proportional representation? Why do we not have a plan so that you are only coming to manage all the groups, the parties should come together and have a plan, a 10-year plan. Whichever government comes to power, that is what they will have to pursue and implement. But the way we do things, we just copy it. We just copy what has been handed over to us. What part of our customary constitutional laws have we incorporated, meaningfully incorporated into our constitutions? Somebody should let me know what part of our customary constitutional laws, which are very useful if you look at them properly. We are a people who do not want winner take all. We want everybody to be inclusive, but we have adopted a constitutional system where winner takes all. And we call the other side a loyal opposition. No opposition is loyal to the government. They see to it that you fall, and then they move into your place. We should sit down and change the system and have our own. We can take things from other countries when we think it is useful and serviceable to us. But we should not abandon together what we have. Until we change that, we will continue to be poor and to be dissatisfied with our governments. We have to change that.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse. We do have one question that has come in. This will be our final question. And this question is from His Excellency, Johan Hesse. He is asking, do you think Dr. Kwame Nkrumah would be satisfied with Ghana's development thus far?
Kwame Nkrumah believes in a plan, to have a plan. Kwame Nkrumah is a socialist. One of the reasons why he broke up with the Convention People's United Gokos Convention was that they accused him of being a communist, because when they were arrested, they found an unsigned communist card in his luggage. And the members of the United Gokos Convention, they used that as one of the means to remove him as General Secretary and appointed him as what you call a treasurer. And why they bring, he would not at all be dissatisfied with what was going on. And I sometimes wonder up to today, if somebody can tell me, where is the house of Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana? Somebody was asking me when he visited Ghana, he wanted to visit Kwame Nkrumah house. I do not know.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I think that's something, HACSA will definitely take up because celebrating and really archiving and preserving, key historical sites, monuments, especially for people who have been so critical to our history, is very important. We do have a follow-up. I do see one follow-up question from Ambassador Swanaker. She's asking, what is the strategy? Ambassador Swanaker. Her follow-up question is, what is the strategy?
What is the strategy? The strategy is for us to recognize that we are not getting anywhere with the present system of government which we have. It's not helping us. It is not helping those who imparted it to us too. And if it is not helping us, why do we not change it? Until we change it, we cannot make any meaningful impact in our society. There is also the question of corruption, which is not helping our governments and our people to advance, to do the things. What is the strategy we have to adopt? We have to be firm in our conviction, establish institutions that will check corruption. We should have a legislation like integrity in public life, where if you are entering public service, they do in so many places, you have to declare what you have. When you are leaving too, there should be a committee to see what you have acquired since you were in government. And if you were, as a public servant, your lifestyle is not commensurate to your earnings, you should immediately be investigated. I drafted a law to that effect in the Gambia, and the lawyers there were up in arms that it was unconstitutional. It went as far as to the Privy Council, and they said, no, it was not unconstitutional. If you say your uncle, for instance, gave you the money, your uncle will have to be investigated to find whether your uncle has that money to give it to you. Whoever you said gave you the money will have to be investigated too. He becomes a subject of the investigation of the properties which you have acquired. So if we are willing to do these things, and the people who follow think that, well, this is what we want, they supported it, then we will be making a headway. You have a constitution, you have a government. People who do not speak English cannot be nominated as candidates to go to parliament, and you call it democracy. The majority of the people who vote because they cannot speak the English, like they cannot be candidates. Are they stupid people or are they ignorant people? Well, why don't they go to parliament, and then when they speak, it should be translated? What is happening to our Bureau of Ghana languages and things like that? We have not, probably is dead by now. But then these are some of the things that we have to do. the fact that a person is unable to speak the English language should not bar him from going to Parliament. When he gets to Parliament and speaks in his language, it should be translated.
Thank you, Mr. Hesse. Unfortunately, our time has come to an end. If you could, I know I've really been enjoying this discussion, and I think we will have an informal engagement following the formal engagement. But
right.
I think if we could, if you could kindly conclude with your final comments for our viewers.
My final comment is that it's a pleasure for me to be speaking to you, and I congratulate HACSA for coming up with this idea, which is part of bringing the African or Black community together to share views so that we move our continent forward to achieve the objectives and aims which we all desired for Africa. And I hope that our listeners will be inspired to join the group and to help to move African people together so that we also become part of the wider society in the world and not be ignored as we are now. Our hopes and aspirations will not be achieved in our lifetime, but it's a beginning. We have made a beginning. Those who fought for independence did not start the independence movement. The independence movement was started by people long gone, long dead and gone. We inherited it and continued. So we also have an obligation to start something. It may not be successful now. There may be downs and falls. That is part of life. And when we have the downs, we should find a way to address the downs so that we move forward rather than get frustrated and then stop what we are doing. We should not allow ourselves to be defeated by the changing circumstances of life. This is what I will advise the organizers of HACSA or those and those who aspire to see that Africa takes her rightful place in the community of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hesse, and we will take up that challenge. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for inspiring us to move our continent forward and really to allow the African continent to be a dominable force on a global scale, as you've rightly challenged us to do. As we move further into 2021, we at HACSA continue to work diligently to bring you informative and engaging content and activities. Remember to save the date for our upcoming HACSA Summit, which is scheduled for July 3rd to July 5th, 2021. I will now invite G.T. Swanaker to provide you with more information on HACSA and our upcoming activities.
Hello, everybody. I want to take this opportunity to invite all of you to register for the HACSA Sankofa Virtual Summit 2021 on the 3rd to the 5th of July. This year's summit, being virtual, means we get the opportunity to access even more people. It's going to be an exciting event with incredible keynote speakers and engaging and thought-provoking panelists, as well as a virtual gala. At HACSA, we see the importance of bridging the gap between Africans on the continent and Africans in the diaspora. And by attending our summit, this is exactly what you'll be experiencing. We assure you, you will not be disappointed. Registration is open to all, and we have kept the fee inexpensive at $25 in order to encourage as many people to join, especially students and young people. I also want to invite you to join the HACSA Sankofa network, which gives you access to our monthly newsletter, amazing webinars like this, and the opportunity to network with fellow HACSA Sankofa members. The membership fee is $100 a year, and for students under 25, the fee is $50 a year. For those of you who sign up to become members today, you'll receive a free registration to the HACSA Virtual Summit. So tell your family and tell your friends, and let's make this an event to remember together. To register for the summit and to join the Sankofa network, visit www.thehaxa.org. That is www.thehaxa.org. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, GT. Viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, Mr. Hesse, thank you for the knowledge, for the wisdom, and truly being able to push us to lead the next chapter as we bring Africa to the forefront of the global stage. Thank you so much, Mr. Hesse. Now, this concludes the formal portion of our webinar, and we can now begin the informal discussion, informal engagement, where we can discuss the topic amongst ourselves. We are using this platform as a test to see how we can have that informal engagement. So for those of you who would like to participate, kindly raise your hand so we can know how to bring you to the stage to have the informal engagement and discussion with our esteemed guest, Mr. Hesse. Okay, we have a few hands raising. Okay. So please continue to raise your hand so that we know to bring you out of the attendee room into the stage so you can have the discussion. You can ask questions yourself rather than asking through me. But again, for those of you who may not want to participate in the informal engagement, thank you again for joining us. It truly has been a wonderful afternoon for those in the GMT zone, time zone, but I do hope that you all take up the challenge that Mr. Hesse has given us to be able to do more in terms of working towards a united Africa. And also by looking at how we can partner with our brothers and sisters in the diaspora and also our brothers and sisters of color to really be able to learn from one another, to be able to be, to contribute more and also to better ourselves as well. Okay, hello, Victor.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you? Welcome. Welcome to our informal engagement.
Good. This is good.
So I know, Victor, you had quite a few questions during the Q&A. I'm glad to see if you have any additional ones for us as we continue the informal engagement.
One of the questions that you read on my behalf, which, how do you pronounce your first name? Lebrecht? Mr. Hesse, how do you pronounce your first name?
Lebrecht.
Lebrecht. Okay. German, huh? Anyway, the question that I had that Yvonne asked on my behalf, you didn't quite address it. What I wanted to know was, in your lifetime, have you seen any event that gives you hope that the relationships between Caucasians and Africans, that there's hope for a better relationship between Africans and Caucasians? That's really what I was after. Have you experienced any or can you point to an event or an occasion or some series of events that give you that kind of hope?
Well, yes, let us look at the, generally speaking,
Okay.
you will be disappointed when you get to the United States. But in certain groups,
That's where I am. I'm in the US.
right? But in certain groups, you find that Black people and Caucasians work together.
That's true.
When I was in university in Ghana, Black students and and Caucasian students work together. We have lecturers who are white lecturers.
Mhm.
We do not find any, those, in fact, who opted to come by their own volition, mix freely with the Black people.
Well, and I think in general, I mean, you find there are a lot of people who don't have any problems relating to Africans or African Americans or people in the Caribbean or anything like that. But there seems to be, I mean, not only here in the U.S. but even in South Africa. I mean, I've seen some sections of the Caucasians who live there who have created enclaves where they do not allow South African Blacks to come into those enclaves. I mean, it just boggles the mind that could happen on the continent of Africa, on the motherland. I mean, I don't understand those things.
Well, that is true. That may be true, but don't you also think that the children of these Caucasians are now beginning to understand that Blacks are also equal?
Oh, I think yeah. I mean, I as I said, it's not.
It is not something which I believe will change immediately, but not in our lifetime. Maybe as time goes on, it will change.
And that
is what the United States experience where you are. That is what they claim. So they should let the time will come, I believe, when those who are Caucasians and do not want what is getting on there, they will move back to Europe.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, they will move back, because the situation will be that if you are going to practice apartheid in a country that rejects apartheid, then you have to move out.
Yeah.
You have to move out. The fact that you said that, have I seen anything which gives me a hope?
Yes.
Somebody, we were discussing the issue, and he said, Mr. Hesse, when you came into this world, the world was created. Don't you realize that the person who created the world put white people somewhere and they put Black people together? It means that they cannot come together. It's not intended. So what you say may be true to the extent we can live, they were arguing that, okay, we can live separately, but work together. But we cannot mix up. They don't want them to, some of them don't want you to marry into their clan. And you also do not want your children to marry some of them. So all of us have an obligation to change this attitude.
Yeah, U.S. had laws like that. I mean, they've since changed. South Africa had laws like that. They've since changed and so on. But
it's taking. Our problem is that it's taking. We think it is taking too long for the change to come.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a human understanding. We all have to do education to make them feel that, look, we are all together. You cannot say that you are superior, inferior. What makes you think so?
Yeah.
Thank you. It looks like
so let us all. It is our responsibility to see that it happens.
Okay.
Because we live together, it is our responsibility to see that this idea of discrimination is wiped out completely.
Yeah, it's a tough assignment, but it's a good goal for us to have to work towards.
But it's also definitely something that we can't do alone, right? We have to be working with our allies. We have to be working with all groups, because it definitely is something that you can't expect the oppressed, to be the one to change the mindset of the oppressor. We also have to change our mindset. I think, Mr. Hesse, when you noted that we have to be confident in our systems, in our capabilities, and not be inferior, that is the first step. But we also have to change that mindset of the oppressor to realize that they also have to see us on an equal footing. I think your experience in Canada was really, truly eye-opening, where you just came into the University of Ottawa and you just went there to do your studies, to do your work. And just by virtue of the achievements you've made and who you are, they were able to see, oh, wow, you changed their perception of what they felt, a Black person can achieve.
Exactly. If you you are right that we should also change some of our attitudes. You cannot say that all white people are racist, or as soon as you missed a white person, oh, because he's a white person, he's not good.
Yeah.
We have to change that attitude. Yeah. You have to mix with people, associate with them before you come to certain conclusions. You cannot say that all of them or all Black people are fools, or all white people are wicked. It is not true.
It's not true. I agree.
You're right. So we have to first have to change our attitude if we want to live together.
And I do see we have some comments coming in. I just want to make sure that you are reading them. We've got some quite positive comments. And again, I do invite more people to come to this informal engagement and discussion. We're having a wonderful time speaking with Mr. Hesse and Victor, but I'm sure more of you would like to join the discussion. We do have some wonderful feedback coming in through the chat. I won't read all of them. There's quite a few, but lastly, I think the most recent one coming from Ambassador Swanaker, just as a follow-up, was a statement in terms of what makes a difference is institutional and systemic racism, which is quite true. Race being a political construct and not real. In terms of, the connection that we all have, everyone originated from an African mother. We should also look to reading The 7 Daughters of Eve to really be able to see that, and the evidence that's provided in that book, that we truly are one human race. We also have some positive comments from Vanessa. But hey, I apologize for the pronunciation, Vanessa. She's saying, hello, Uncle Lebrecht from Eddie and your Liverpool family. We also have a comment from Laura from UNESCO. Africa, West Indies, sharing of experiences, learning from our brothers and sisters. It's our moral obligation and goal. Thanks for this amazing experience. Then if we follow up, we also have a comment from Jemima. Thank you, Mr. Hesse, for sharing. It's truly been insightful. And then also comments from Hillary. Great insights, Uncle Lebrecht. Bless you. Great insights and words of wisdom. And then Mary as well. Very insightful program. Thank you, Mr. Hesse. Thank you, Haxa. We also have a comment from Catherine. Wow, what great insights shared by Mr. Hesse. Thank you. And we have quite a few comments. I want to really invite more people in. I know that we are actually near the time we've gone over. So I think we'll just conclude at this point. Mr. Hesse, again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Truly, you are a living legend, and I do hope we can have more engagements with you. Victor, thank you so much for joining the informal engagement as well. Thank you to everyone who commented, asked a question, but of course, we are just truly honored and privileged that we were able to hear from Mr. Lebrecht Hesse. Thank you so much, and we do owe it to him as well as to ourselves to take up the challenge that he has given us to make Africa far stronger in terms of a united nation and being a dominable force on the global stage. So let's take up that challenge and be able to make sure we can make our contribution to making our continent great, and also by doing further exchanges with our brothers and sisters in the African diaspora. We definitely owe it to ourselves to learn from their experience and to also share our experience with them. So thank you everyone for your time. And of course, again, Mr. Hesse, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to the HACSA technical team, GT, Natasha, Kevin, Estelle, Gift, as well as thank you, Barbara Hesse, for all of your help as well behind the scene. Thank you again, Ambassador Swanaker, and everyone from HACSA who continues to our HACSA supporters and Sankofa Network members for supporting our activities. And please, please, please do look out and sign up for our HACSA Summit July 3rd to July 5th. We're really looking forward to it. So many wonderful things, as GT explained. So I encourage all of you to sign up and to attend July 3rd to July 5th. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, Mr. Hesse. Thank you so much.